It's about finding the place that's the right place in the song, and that takes quite a lot of experience.
What drives a man who once stood at the center of rock fame to walk away, never to return? Imagine selling tens of millions of albums, selling out stadiums, night after night, and then choosing to go missing in action. That twist of fate rested in the hands of one guitarist whose gentle drawl and finger-picked lines had an impact. Today, we unlock the moment when Mark Knopfler laid down his sword for good, and why Dire Straits will never march again. But how do you go from gritty London pubs to global arenas, and still feel the cracks forming underneath? When did the high notes of success start echoing with something heavier? The height of the hype. From the moment Dire Straits first formed in 1977, they stood apart from many other bands in the United Kingdom. Mark Knopfler, David Knopfler, John Illsley, and Pick Withers began by playing pubs and clubs in London. Their style mixed guitar lines, great vocals, and stories that felt real. No one expected their first single, Sultans of Swing, to become a major hit. When the song climbed into the top 10 on the British charts, and then reached listeners in the United States, something changed forever. Over the next few years, Dire Straits released 3 strong albums. Their self-titled debut in 1978 and Communique in 1979 showed they could write catchy songs with thoughtful lyrics. In 1980, on the album Making Movies, they added new members like keyboardist Alan Clark and guitarist Hal Lindes. Each song brought more attention to Knopfler's smooth voice and his skill with fingerstyle guitar. The band's name and fame grew slowly, but nothing prepared them for what came next. In 1985, Dire Straits released Brothers in Arms, the album that would change their lives. It became one of the best-selling albums of the decade. Songs like Money for Nothing, Walk of Life, and the title track introduced many new fans to the group. The album sold more than 30 million copies around the world. It won Grammy Awards and was one of the first records to use digital recording technology. That move made the sound clear and bright, and it reached listeners in every corner of the world. Spurred by that success, the band launched a world tour that lasted nearly 2 years. They played more than 300 shows in stadiums and arenas across 5 continents. In cities like New York, Tokyo, Sydney, London, and Paris, crowds waited for hours in the cold or the heat for a chance to get in. Night after night, tens of thousands of fans cheered loudly as Knopfler's fingers danced across guitar strings. Behind the scenes, the pace was intense. Long drives between cities, quick sound checks, and late flights became the new normal. Hotel rooms turned into brief resting spots before another show. While fans saw the fun and excitement, Knopfler felt pressure increasing. Each performance demanded perfect playing and singing. The numbers in the audience kept climbing, but he worried that the music was becoming part of a large machine. What had started as simple storytelling felt at risk of turning into a lifelong obligation. As the shows added up, Mark Knopfler began to feel strange emotions. He loved playing guitar, but he missed the earlier days when he could see people up close. The cheers from 30,000 people felt good, but also distant. He spoke of feeling dehumanized by the scale, as though he was no longer an individual. For the first time, he questioned if all the success was worth the price of his comfort and sense of self. By the end of the tour in 1987, Knopfler admitted that the hype around the band had reached a point he could not enjoy any longer. He had given his best performance on stages worldwide, but he also saw the cost of fame. He sensed that he was no longer a man sharing songs with friends, but a performer in a never-ending show. At that moment, he knew that something had to change, even if it meant giving up the band he had helped build from the ground up. During that time, the music video for Money for Nothing played non-stop on MTV, with Sting's backing vocals. That new medium brought the band into millions of homes. The tour crew swelled to over 50 people. Knopfler flew in jets between venues. Late nights in hotel rooms, he worked on new song ideas and called home to stay grounded. Even with all the fame, little moments with friends reminded him why he loved simple shows. But what happens when the dream you built becomes the weight you can no longer carry? When does the spotlight blind more than it shines? Breaking point. In 1988, fans around the world learned that Dire Straits would stop touring and performing. The band had become one of the most successful rock groups of the 1980s. When the news broke, listeners felt sad. They had watched Mark Knopfler, David Knopfler, John Illsley, Alan Clark, and Guy Fletcher rise from local pubs to international stages in just 10 years. To understand why the band chose this path, we must look at the demands that led to their breaking point. After releasing Brothers in Arms in 1985, a landmark album that sold over 20 million copies in less than a year, Dire Straits launched a world tour that became legendary. Between February 1985 and August 1986, they performed more than 300 shows. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, London, Tokyo, and Sydney hosted massive stadium concerts. Opening acts included bands that admired Dire Straits as pioneers of guitar-driven music. The tour schedule allowed little room for rest. Nights ended with final chords and roaring applause, but mornings began with flights to the next city. For Knopfler, hotel rooms and airport lounges became part of his daily life. He traveled by plane, bus, and van between shows. Sound checks took place at dawn. Late meals replaced home cooking. He carried his guitar case as a constant companion. As concerts continued, the excitement of performing live clashed with the reality of a never-ending cycle of travel. Knopfler's creative spark began to dim under the weight of constant performance. He spent time writing new songs between concerts. Yet, those ideas waited months before seeing the inside of a studio. He missed the intimate setting of a small recording room where he could focus on each song. Instead, he repeatedly played the same live set. Gradually, he felt that his music was shifting from personal expression to commercial routine. Family life suffered alongside professional pressure. Knopfler had a wife and 3 young children waiting at home. Birthdays, school events, and holidays passed without his presence. Phone calls became quick check-ins between gigs. He saw photographs of his children more often than he saw them in person. In later interviews, he said he longed for real moments instead of constant applause on stage. Within the band, members recognized a change in Knopfler's mood. Bassist John Illsley suggested adding breaks between tours. Keyboardist Alan Clark offered to handle more interviews to ease his burden. Knopfler agreed to explore side work, composing scores for films such as Local Hero in 1983. Writing for the film showed him a way to make music without the demands of large audiences. He found joy in composing instrumental pieces at his own pace. By early spring of 1988, Knopfler reached a decision. After a show in Hamburg, Germany, he spoke with his manager and bandmates. He told them he needed a rest from being the biggest band in the world. He wanted time to focus on his personal life and creative freedom. He valued those things more than another sold-out tour. His words carried the authority of someone who knew exactly what he needed. The decision became public. First, an official statement appeared on the band's website. Music magazines and radio shows reported the end of the tour and hinted at creative differences. Fans clung to hope for a reunion, but Knopfler treated the announcement as final. He wanted Dire Straits to be remembered for their peak, not for forced comebacks. On June 21, 1988, Dire Straits played their final show in Newcastle upon Tyne, near where Knopfler grew up. That hometown concert brought pride and sadness together. Knopfler and his bandmates delivered flawless performances with their greatest hits. When the last song of Brothers in Arms faded, Knopfler nodded to his fellow musicians and quietly walked off stage. He had closed the curtain on a remarkable era. After the final concert, the members parted ways on good terms. Knopfler began work on his solo career, focusing on quieter, folk and blues-influenced songs. He embraced studio work and smaller shows. The other members pursued their paths, working as session musicians or solo artists. In the years that followed, they spoke fondly of their time together, but no reunion took place. His fans respected his choice and found new ways to celebrate. That breaking point in 1988 marked a turning point in Knopfler's life. It was a choice by the man who wrote the soundtrack for a generation. By walking away, he allowed Dire Straits to remain a powerful memory, preserved at its peak, and never diminished by a forced return. Offers and odds. When Dire Straits ended in 1988, many believed the story was over. However, in the years that followed, rumors of a reunion grew louder. Promoters and old friends reached out. They spoke of stadiums filled again, of new albums and tours. They knew the band's name still carried power. For fans, a reunion felt like a dream. For Mark Knopfler, it was a door he refused to open. In 2008, bassist John Illsley made headlines by suggesting he and Knopfler could bring Dire Straits back for a series of shows. Illsley talked of the songs they had yet to play live and of the joy they once shared on stage. He even noted that a short world tour could earn each band member around £2 million. The idea of reuniting with old friends and reliving those days appealed to many. But he added that he understood if Knopfler was not interested. Across the music world, offers arrived from major venues and festivals. Some packages included free reign over production, booking every night in Hyde Park, Madison Square Garden, or the Sydney Opera House. Corporate sponsors stood ready to cover expenses. Record labels dangled new contracts. Agents promised headline slots at benefit concerts alongside legends like Eric Clapton and Sting. The financial temptation was there. However, behind the offers lay a question. Was money the goal? Knopfler made his stance clear. In interviews, he said he was not a fan of Dire Straits' early hits and saw more value in moving forward than looking back. He felt that repeating performances of old songs would take away from his new work. He talked of wanting to explore different styles and players, instead of returning to a sound he had already created. In 2012, as United Kingdom festivals sought big names, organizers proposed that Dire Straits close the final night of Glastonbury. They imagined tens of thousands singing every word of Romeo and Juliet. Funds for charity poured in. Illsley again approached Knopfler with these details. The answer remained the same. Knopfler thanked them but declined. He believed a one-off show would feel odd, like stepping into someone else's memories. Mark's longtime manager, Ed Bicknell, recalled fielding dozens of reunion ideas each year. He would present them to Knopfler, who would listen and then refuse. Bicknell said Knopfler valued the integrity of the band's legacy more than any sum offered. He did not want to risk delivering a performance below fans' expectations. Instead, he preferred leaving Dire Straits as a story told through albums and recordings. Fans learned to respect Knopfler's choice. Tribute bands formed around the world, packing clubs and small theaters. Listeners created playlists on streaming sites. sharing live bootleg recordings. Radio DJs ran special Dire Straits nights. Each tribute kept the music alive without risking a half-hearted reunion. In this way, Knopfler allowed fans to celebrate the band's golden era without altering its memory. Meanwhile, Knopfler embraced his solo path. He released albums that leaned toward folk, blues, and jazz. His tours featured venues that held a few thousand people at most. He crafted new songs rather than reheating old ones. He worked with musicians who pushed him to grow. In interviews, he spoke of the pleasure of trying fresh ideas and the freedom of shaping projects without checking old set lists. By turning down every reunion offer, Knopfler set a clear boundary. He showed he valued personal fulfillment over fame. He proved that for some artists, the idea of looking back can feel less meaningful than moving forward. In his refusal, he gave fans confidence that Dire Straits would stay perfect in memory. Their legacy remained locked in time, each song preserved as it first sounded. Through these choices, Knopfler revealed why Dire Straits will never get back together. It was never about money or fame. It was about honoring a chapter that closed at the right moment. He let the songs live on through recordings and tribute shows. And in doing so, he kept the magic alive, untouched, complete, and free from compromise. Solo Sanctuary. After the final Dire Straits concert in 1988, Mark Knopfler faced a new path. He no longer wanted huge crowds or arena lights. Instead, he sought a private space to make music on his terms. In 2005, he opened British Grove Studio in Hammersmith, London. The studio offered vintage recording gear, a classic Neve console, and quiet rooms where he could work without distraction. Knopfler assembled a small team, including his long-term collaborator Guy Fletcher. Together, they built a place that felt like a workshop and a home. Over the years, British Grove became the heart of his solo creations and the start of a new chapter. His first solo album, Golden Heart, arrived in 1996. It surprised fans with its gentle blend of folk, country, and Celtic melodies. He followed with Sailing to Philadelphia in 2000, featuring a duet with James Taylor on Daddy's Gone to Knoxville. Later albums included The Rag Picker's Dream, Shangri-La, and Kill to Get Crimson. Each record brought fresh stories drawn from Knopfler's travels and interests. By 2024, he had released 10 solo albums, with his latest titled One Deep River. In these works, Knopfler moved away from rock stadium sounds toward quieter, more reflective music. The songs grew from his life, paying tribute to blues pioneers, local folk scenes, and places he loved. He took his solo music to stages far smaller than stadiums. His tours often featured theaters, concert halls, and club venues that held a few thousand guests at most. In 2002, the Sailing to Philadelphia tour included stops at New York's Beacon Theatre and London's Royal Albert Hall. Knopfler and his band used minimal lighting and simple backdrops. At each show, he played guitar without heavy effects or big amplifiers. That approach lets the audience focus on the notes and the lyrics. After concerts, he would meet a few fans, sign albums, and share a word or two by the stage door. One of the most memorable solo performances took place at London's Garrick Club in 2009. The club, known for its private dinners and relaxed atmosphere, hosted fewer than 100 guests. Knopfler arrived only carrying his guitar. No massive sound system or lights filled the room. He sat on a stool and began playing songs from his solo catalog. Listeners felt as though they sat in his living room. He told stories about how each song began, adding personal touches. After the set, he interacted with nearly everyone and spoke casually about music, life, and the old days in pubs. At British Grove Studio, the creative process felt different than any arena shows he had led. He could record when he chose, without strict deadlines. Vintage microphones stood next to modern equipment on well-worn wooden floors. He often experimented with new instruments, mandolins, slide guitars, and even a ukulele. Fletcher worked at the mixing desk, making sure Knopfler's guitar and voice sounded just right. They recorded in sections, sometimes looping a phrase to find the perfect take. Week after week, they refined each track until it matched Knopfler's vision. The studio walls, decorated with old posters and photos, reminded him of his early days. There, he found the calm and freedom he needed. These solo ventures let Knopfler connect with fans differently. At small venues, he walked through the audience to reach his seat on stage. He welcomed old friends and new faces alike. After the shows, he signed records and offered a few words of thanks. In some cities, he held workshops at music schools, teaching fingerstyle techniques. He invited a handful of students into the studio. He shared tips on songwriting and tone. These moments showed his passion for music beyond fame. Fans said they felt seen not as part of a crowd, but as individuals. That personal bond became as important to him as any chart position or award. The shift from international stadiums to intimate settings marked a new era for Knopfler. He balanced his life between home in London and visits to Newcastle, where he grew up. He wrote songs inspired by landscapes, memories, and the lives of people he met during his travels. Recording at British Grove Studio and performing in smaller rooms gave him control over every detail. He chose the pace. He chose the audience size. He chose the music. In doing so, he created a sanctuary where creativity thrived. This solo sanctuary was not only a studio or a tour style, but it was a new way of living and making music, one that suited Mark Knopfler perfectly. But when the roar of the crowd fades and the stage lights dim, what kind of rhythm does a legend settle into? What does a man who once played for millions choose when the choice is finally his? Life offstage. Mark Knopfler spends his time offstage between two homes. He lives in Hammersmith, London, and visits Newcastle upon Tyne, where he grew up. In London, he keeps a house near the Thames. His mornings are as normal as anyone else's. He reads the newspaper and plans his day before walking to British Grove Studio. In Newcastle, he walks along the Tyne and visits old friends. These trips give him fresh ideas for songs and help him stay grounded. Family life is important to him. He married in his mid-20s and has 3 children. During Dire Straits' tours, he missed many early birthdays. Back in the day, he watched school plays and supported his children at sports games. He helped with homework whenever he was around. He taught his kids basic guitar chords in the living room. Those moments bring him more joy than any stage applause. Knopfler also writes music for films. His first score was for Local Hero, released in 1983. He created gentle guitar pieces that matched the small Scottish village in the story. Later, he composed the score for The Princess Bride. People praised his work for its sweet melodies and emotion. Film scoring helped him record in a peaceful studio without the pressure of tours. It let him explore different themes and spare arrangements. He says this work kept his creative spark alive. He loves his guitar collection. He owns a Fender Stratocaster, a National Steel guitar, and a Gibson Les Paul. He tunes each instrument and cleans it by hand. He often invites young players to try his National guitar at workshops. He teaches simple fingerstyle techniques and songwriting basics. He says sharing his tools and tips helps new musicians learn. These sessions take place in small music schools. He supports music education. He donates instruments to schools in London and Newcastle. He gives funds for guitar classes at community centers. He once visited a youth program to help set up new lessons. He sat with them and explained chord progressions and everything else they needed to know. He showed students how to listen for tone. He said that early guidance can shape a person's love for music. He still follows his hometown football team. He watches Newcastle United matches and wears their shirt on game days. He discusses tactics with friends at a pub. He once played guitar between halves at a charity match full of former players. He says the match felt like a friendly jam rather than a performance. He enjoys these low-key events and often donates to local sports causes. He hosts small charity concerts too. At British Grove Studio, he invites fellow musicians and his fans. They share songs and stories. He serves them meals and holds deep conversations with them. These events raise money for music education and hospital charities. He likes the friendly feel. It makes him feel good. He says that playing with friends reminds him why he loves music in the first place. These nights are always special. He keeps a writing routine in his home office. He wakes early and writes down the new ideas he has. He notes phrases inspired by his walks and memories of places. He records short melody sketches on his phone. After breakfast, he reviews demos in the studio and chooses the best ones. He says that good songs often start as simple lines of text. He edits lyrics by hand until they feel great and enjoyable. Away from the stage, Mark Knopfler built a life based on simple pleasures. He balances family, music, and community work in London and Newcastle. He scores films, hosts workshops, and supports youth programs. He finds joy in small concerts, writing, and time with his family. By choosing this path, he shows that a great musician can thrive without constant fame. His life off stage proves that peace and passion can go hand in hand with lasting creative success. These habits feed his mind and keep him inspired to keep doing great and memorable things with the people around him. So, what happens when a man known for stadium anthems chooses silence over spotlights? When the pen replaces the pedestal and the applause is traded for peace? As Mark Knopfler turned inward, was the world finally ready to look back and honor the legend he quietly became? Legacy locked in. In 2018, Dire Straits earned a place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony held in Cleveland, Ohio. Members Mark Knopfler, John Illsley, Alan Clark, Fletcher, and Pick Withers were honored for work spanning 1977 to 1992. Knopfler chose not to attend. Instead, he watched the ceremony on television at home with his family. He felt their collective achievements spoke for themselves. By staying away, he closed that chapter with dignity. He honored the band's legacy gratefully without seeking more public attention. Today, Dire Straits songs fill the airwaves, streaming services, and vinyl collections across the world. Hits such as Sultans of Swing, Romeo and Juliet, Private Investigations, and Money for Nothing appear on radio rotations and curated playlists daily. Albums like Brothers in Arms and Making Movies continue to reach diamond and multi-platinum status in many countries. New listeners discover the band's music on Spotify, Apple Music, and other audio platforms. Each guitar riff and lyric still feel fresh. Classic rock shows play these songs weekly in pubs and on digital radio. At home, speakers and headphones bring those melodies into our lives again. Fans sing along in cars and at house parties, proving that the music remains part of everyday life. Tribute bands and cover groups keep the story alive through live performances in venues both large and small. Musicians from Europe, North America, Asia, and Australia recreate the band's guitar tones, stage setup, and lighting cues to deliver faithful renditions of the music. Fans fill clubs, theaters, and open-air festivals to hear these shows. Many concerts raise funds for charities or support community causes. They let followers relive the magic without altering the original history. At the same time, documentaries, podcasts, and books continue to explore the band's story. Authors and filmmakers interview road crew, studio engineers, music critics, and former opening acts to reveal new details about recording sessions and life on tour. This ongoing interest shows that listeners want to understand how the band created its timeless sound. Streaming platforms provide detailed data on how often songs play and where listeners tune in. On the anniversary of Brothers in Arms, play counts surge on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Official music videos online have hundreds of millions of views, while fan uploads add even more plays. Vinyl sales also rise during record store events and anniversary reissues. Fans build tribute playlists that blend songs from different eras, mixing early pub recordings with later chart hits. Each year, Dire Straits' streams climb, proving the music has depth beyond its original time. Fans share songs on social media and tag friends when those riffs appear in films or commercials, highlighting how the sound still resonates. Mark Knopfler turned down every reunion offer to protect the band's reputation and legacy. He believed bringing Dire Straits back would risk diluting the impact of their original work. Over the years, promoters offered headline slots at major festivals such as Glastonbury, Coachella, and Lollapalooza, often with guaranteed fees that reached millions of dollars. Knopfler politely declined each proposal. He saw the original recordings as complete art pieces that should remain untouched. He preferred that fans remember the band at its creative peak instead of watching a diluted reunion. This decision won him respect from listeners around the world. As a solo artist, Knopfler still honors some Dire Straits songs in new settings. During solo tours in New York, London, Berlin, and other cities, he sometimes plays the opening riff of "Money for Nothing" or a solo acoustic version of "Brothers in Arms." He adapts the songs to fit his current style, tempo, and mood. This approach offers fans nods to the past while letting them hear fresh arrangements and subtle changes in dynamics. By balancing respect for the original material with creative growth, he maintains both legacies without forcing a full band reunion. Beyond concerts, Knopfler shares his knowledge through teaching and workshops at British Grove Studio. He hosts small masterclasses focused on songwriting, guitar technique, and studio production. Recent sessions were also streamed online to reach fans worldwide. He discusses life in the band, working with analog recording gear, and the value of pacing in music. Young musicians learn fingerstyle guitar and songcraft directly from him. He also donates instruments and resources to music programs in London and Newcastle, helping future artists develop their skills. The story of Dire Straits now feels complete and sealed. It began in London pubs and rose to the world's biggest stadiums. It ended in 1988 with a final concert and closed fully when the band entered the Hall of Fame in 2018. Since then, the music has lived on in records, streams, live tributes, film and television placements, tribute conventions, and new listeners eagerly discovering them. Mark Knopfler's choice to end that chapter at its height made Dire Straits truly timeless. This legacy remains locked in, ready for anyone to discover or revisit at any time. That was the story of how Mark Knopfler chose his path and kept Dire Straits' legacy perfect. If you want more interesting stories, click the next video on your screen. Do not forget to like this video, Share your favorite Dire Straits song in the comments and subscribe for more.